The entertainment industry thrives on glitz, glamour, and carefully curated images. But behind the flashing cameras and the spotlight, reality has a way of interrupting, sometimes with an intensity that shakes the very foundation of everything fans think they know. For Shu Kai and Tan Songyun, one such moment came not through scandal or rumor, but through an accident that would forever change how people saw them and how they saw each other. It was a crisp evening in Shanghai, one of those rare nights where the air felt alive, humming with the kind of electric energy that only a city like this could produce. Shu Kai and Tan Songyun had just wrapped a long day of shooting. They were exhausted, but exhilarated, the kind of tiredness that comes with doing something you love, mixed with the satisfaction of knowing the world would soon see the magic they had been creating together. Neither of them could have imagined that within a matter of minutes, exhaustion would be replaced by fear, chaos, and an incident that would trend across every social platform in China. The streets were alive with neon reflections bouncing off the wet asphalt, the hum of engines blending with the occasional shout of street vendors. Their driver maneuvered carefully through traffic, Shu Kai seated by the window, gazing outside with his usual calm detachment, while Tan Songyun leaned slightly forward, chatting about their next scene. She was always the more talkative one, filling the silences with her laughter, while Shu Kai preferred to respond in small, measured sentences, his eyes doing most of the talking. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, a motorbike swerved too close to their vehicle, its headlight flashing like a sudden explosion in the dark. The driver slammed the brakes, tires screeching against the road. The car jolted violently, throwing both actors forward. The sound of shattering glass mixed with the high-pitched scream of metal twisting under impact. It wasn't just a near miss, it was a full collision. The silence that followed was almost more terrifying than the crash itself. Shu Kai, his heart hammering, immediately turned toward Tan Songyun. Her face was pale, her breaths shallow, but she was conscious. He reached for her hand instinctively, and for a brief moment, the chaos outside didn't matter. All that mattered was that she was there, alive, her wide eyes staring back at him in shock. Fans who had been lingering outside the filming location rushed toward the scene as word spread like wildfire. Phones were pulled out, cameras clicked, and before long, blurry videos of the accident were circulating online. The hashtags exploded, #ShuKai accident, #Tan Songyun crash, #Are they safe? Millions of fans held their breath, waiting for answers. But the true story of what unfolded in those few minutes went far deeper than the headlines. Witnesses reported seeing Shu Kai emerge first, shaken but determined, immediately trying to open the passenger door where Tan Songyun was trapped. His usually composed demeanor cracked into raw panic as he shouted for help. A passerby described how his hands trembled as he tried to yank the bent metal away from her side, his voice breaking as he called her name over and over again. The driver, dazed but alive, had already dialed emergency services. Sirens pierced through the night air soon after, their wails adding to the surreal atmosphere of the scene. Tan Songyun, still trapped inside, was whispering faint reassurances that she was fine, though her trembling hands betrayed her words. Shu Kai refused to leave her side, crouching down so she could see his face through the crack of the door, telling her in a low, urgent voice, "Stay with me. Don't close your eyes. I'm right here." When the paramedics finally arrived, it took several tense minutes to cut her free. Fans pressed against the police lines, some crying, others praying, and the moment Tan Songyun was carried onto a stretcher, Shu Kai insisted on climbing into the ambulance with her. Cameras caught the image of him holding her hand as the doors closed, a single photograph that would dominate news feeds for days. At the hospital, chaos reigned again, but this time it was the media who stormed the scene. Reporters scrambled for details, fans camped outside for hours, refusing to leave until they had confirmation of the actor's safety. Both Shu Kai and Tan Songyun were treated for minor injuries, bruises, scratches, and shock, but miraculously, nothing life-threatening. Still, the emotional weight of the ordeal left scars that couldn't be seen on any scan. Insiders revealed that Shu Kai refused treatment until he knew Tan Songyun was stable. Nurses described how he paced the corridors, restless and pale, until finally allowed into her room. And when he walked in, she reportedly smiled through her tears, whispering, "I told you I was fine." But he couldn't bring himself to smile back, not when he kept replaying the moment in his mind, the sound of glass breaking, the sight of her pressed against the door, helpless. That night marked a shift. 4 years, Shu Kai and Tan Songyun had been colleagues, co-stars, and friends, admired for their undeniable chemistry on screen. But in that hospital room, surrounded by sterile walls and the lingering smell of antiseptic, their bond was rewritten. The accident had stripped away the walls fame often builds. It left them raw, vulnerable, human. Social media was ablaze with speculation. Fans dissected every frame of the accident footage, every grainy photo, every eyewitness account. "Did you see how he refused to leave her?" one post read. "The way he looked at her in that moment, that wasn't acting. That was real." Another fan wrote, "Sometimes it takes a tragedy to reveal the truth." Shu Kai and Tan Songyun aren't just co-stars. They're something more. While their agencies rushed to release official statements assuring the public of their safety and asking for privacy, the public was far from ready to move on. The accident had cracked open something deeper, a glimpse into emotions that neither star had ever publicly confirmed. In the days that followed, Shu Kai was spotted arriving at the hospital repeatedly, sometimes in the early morning, sometimes late at night. Tan Songyun, though injured, often greeted him with laughter, trying to lighten the mood, but those who saw them described a quiet intimacy between them, the kind that spoke louder than words. He brought her flowers, books, even a playlist of songs she loved, insisting she needed rest and positivity. What truly stunned fans was the moment a video leaked from inside the hospital. In it, Shu Kai could be seen adjusting Tan Songyun's blanket as she dozed off, his hand lingering near hers as if torn between restraint and the need to hold on. The clip went viral instantly, sparking debates that filled every corner of the internet. But beyond the gossip and speculation, there was a very real truth. Accidents have a way of forcing people to confront what they've been avoiding. And for Shu Kai and Tan Songyun, that night was a wake-up call. The industry that had once been their world suddenly felt fragile compared to the simple fact of survival. In a rare interview weeks later, Shu Kai was asked about the incident. His usually calm expression shifted, and for a moment, the mask slipped. "Life is unpredictable," he said quietly. "One second you're laughing, the next, you realize how much you could lose. It changes you." He didn't say her name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. Tan Songyun, on the other hand, chose to handle the aftermath with her trademark optimism. "Accidents remind us to slow down," she told a journalist. "To appreciate the people around us more. I'm grateful not just that we're safe, but that we're reminded of what really matters." Behind those words, though, fans could sense something unspoken, a tenderness she carried now whenever Shu Kai was mentioned. And though neither has ever openly declared anything beyond friendship, the world continues to wonder, did that night spark something more? Or did it simply reveal what had always been there, hidden beneath the layers of professionalism and silence? The accident may have lasted only seconds, but the ripple effect was enormous. It brought two of China's most beloved stars into sharp focus, not as actors, not as characters, but as people, fragile, vulnerable, and deeply human. The story of Shu Kai and Tan Songyun's accident is not just one of twisted metal and shattered glass, but of resilience, unspoken emotions, and the undeniable bond forged in the chaos of one fateful night. For fans, it was a reminder that their idols live real lives off-screen, with real fears and real feelings. For Shu Kai and Tan Songyun, it was perhaps the beginning of something neither of them expected, a story not written by scripts or guided by directors, but shaped by fate itself. And maybe, just maybe, it was destiny's way of telling them that sometimes, the most powerful love stories don't begin in front of the camera, they begin when the cameras are turned off, in the moments that no one is supposed to see. The crash itself was only the beginning. What followed in the minutes and hours afterward was a storm of fear, chaos, and raw emotions that no movie script could ever capture. The night air still carried the acrid smell of burning rubber when Shu Kai pulled himself out of the twisted car door. His shoulder stung, his knuckles were bleeding from the impact against the dashboard, but he barely noticed. All his attention was locked on the passenger side where Tan Songyun was still trapped. Her seatbelt had locked tightly across her chest, pinning her against the seat. Broken glass glistened around her like cruel shards of ice, catching the neon reflections of the city lights. "Songyun, look at me." Shu Kai's voice cracked, louder than anyone had ever heard him speak in public. His usual calm, composed aura shattered under the weight of the moment. Her eyes flickered open, glassy but focused enough to find his face. Her lips parted as if to reassure him, but the words caught in her throat. Her hand trembled, reaching toward him but stopping just short, as if her body refused to obey. Shu Kai's instincts took over. He tugged desperately at the door handle, but the metal refused to budge. Passers-by tried to help, pulling, pushing, even kicking at the dented frame, but the car seemed determined to keep her prisoner. Shu Kai's panic deepened. He slammed his fist against the door, ignoring the sting of pain shooting up his arm. "I'm not leaving you in there," he shouted, as if daring fate to challenge him. A man from the crowd ran forward with a crowbar, and together they pried at the bent door frame. Every second felt like an eternity. Songyun's shallow breaths echoed in Shu Kai's ears like the ticking of a countdown clock. Finally, with a horrible screech of metal, the door gave way slightly, leaving just enough of a gap for Shu Kai to crouch down, pressing his face close to hers. "You're okay," he whispered fiercely, his forehead almost touching hers. "Stay with me. Just stay with me." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The crowd parted as paramedics rushed in, their bright uniforms cutting through the shadows. Shu Kai refused to step back at first, holding her hand as they worked, until a paramedic firmly pushed him aside. He stumbled back, his chest heaving, but his eyes never left her. The paramedics worked quickly, cutting the seatbelt, easing her out carefully as if she were made of glass. Shu Kai hovered, reaching out to steady her as she was placed onto the stretcher. Cameras from bystanders flashed, capturing the moment his hand lingered on hers, their fingers brushing even as the paramedics tried to move her away. When she winced in pain, Shu Kai's composure broke completely. "Be careful with her," he snapped at the paramedics, his voice sharp with protective urgency. They gave him a firm but understanding nod, assuring him she would be all right. The ambulance doors slammed shut, but not before Shu Kai leapt inside, ignoring the calls of managers and assistants who had finally arrived on the scene. He wasn't going to let her face this alone. Inside the ambulance, the chaos of flashing lights and shouting voices gave way to an intimate silence, broken only by the steady beeping of medical equipment. Shu Kai sat by her side, his eyes locked on her pale face. She turned her head slightly, managing the faintest smile. "You're bleeding," she murmured, her eyes flicking to the cut across his knuckles. "I don't care," he said quickly, his voice raw. "Just keep talking to me. Don't close your eyes." Her smile widened slightly, weak but filled with warmth. "Bossy, aren't you?" she teased faintly, as if determined to inject humor into the most terrifying moment of their lives. Shu Kai's lips twitched into a broken half-smile, but his eyes glistened with something deeper, fear, relief, and something unspoken. When they arrived at the hospital, chaos erupted again. Doctors and nurses rushed them inside, journalists already gathering outside the emergency entrance. Shu Kai tried to follow Tan Songyun into the treatment room, but a nurse blocked him firmly. "Sir, you need to wait outside." His fists clenched. He wanted to fight, to demand they let him in, but he knew he had no choice. His chest heaved as he backed away, collapsing into a plastic chair in the corridor. The seconds dragged by like hours. Every shout of a nurse, every clang of a metal tray made his heart pound harder. A fan who had somehow slipped inside the hospital later recalled seeing Shu Kai sitting there, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face, whispering something over and over again. Though they couldn't hear his exact words, the expression on his face was clear. He was praying, bargaining, begging for her to be all right. When the door finally opened, Shu Kai shot to his feet. A doctor emerged, peeling off his gloves, and gave a small nod. "She's stable. Minor injuries, no internal bleeding. She'll be all right." The wave of relief that washed over Shu Kai nearly buckled his knees. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, his eyes shining with raw emotion. Without waiting for permission, he rushed into the room the moment they allowed visitors. Tan Songyun lay on the bed, and dripping into her arm. She turned her head as he entered, and her eyes softened. "See? Told you I'd be fine." But Shu Kai didn't smile. He walked straight to her bedside, pulling a chair close, his hand gently finding hers. His voice was low, shaky. "Don't ever scare me like that again." For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind of silence that spoke louder than words. Her eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from the intensity of his words, the depth of his gaze. She squeezed his hand lightly, as if answering him without speaking. Outside, fans kept vigil. Social media exploded with blurry photos, with hashtags climbing into the millions. But inside that hospital room, Shu Kai and Tan Songyun existed in a world of their own, fragile, shaken, but bound by something unspoken that the crash had forced to the surface. It wasn't the lights, the fame, or the cameras that defined them in that moment. It was the undeniable truth that when everything fell apart, all Shu Kai cared about was making sure Tan Songyun was safe. And as she drifted into sleep that night, still holding his hand, one thing became clear: accidents don't just break glass and metal. Sometimes, they break down walls that people have been building for years. For Shu Kai and Tan Songyun, that night wasn't just about survival. It was the night their story truly began. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories about your favorite stars. Your support helps us bring you even more dramatic and exclusive content.